Tonight, on to New Hampshire.
Make America great again.
After a resounding win in Iowa, the former president looks to the next contest of 2024 against a narrowing field.
Iowa made this Republican primary a two-person race.
Plus, the Supreme Court set to rule over access to the abortion pill.
The FDA also has this drug under a black box.
And countdown to the March for Life in Washington.
A new day for the pro-life movement.
All this and more on Faith Nation. A decisive Iowa victory for the GOP frontrunner as Trump delivers in Iowa. Good evening, everyone. From CBN's studio headquarters in Virginia Beach, I'm Wendy Griffith in for John and Jenna. Well, next up, New Hampshire, with the first in the nation primary just days away. All eyes are on last night's battle for second, where a dwindling field is looking for some of that Hawkeye State momentum heading into New Hampshire. CBN's Matt Galka has more on the results.
MAGA, make America great again. And America first. America first is a very important part of MAGA.
Donald Trump celebrated a big victory in Iowa. The former president took more than 50% of the vote on caucus night. Rivals Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley were neck and neck, but finished a distant second and third. The 30-point victory sent a strong message that Trump dominates the Republican Party.
And I really think this is time now for everybody, our country, to come together. We want to come together. Whether it's Republican or Democrat or liberal or conservative, it would be so nice if we could come together.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis devoted a lot of resources to the Hawkeye State. Polls showed him fading in the run-up to the caucus, but he edged out Haley by 2 points for second with no plans to suspend the campaign.
They were predicting that we wouldn't be able to get our ticket punched here out of Iowa, but I can tell you, because of your support, in spite of all of that they threw at us, everyone against us, we've got our ticket punched out of Iowa.
Despite the third-place finish, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley told supporters her campaign has the momentum coming out of Iowa.
I can safely say, tonight, Iowa made this Republican primary a two-person race.
The results did narrow the field. Tech businessman Vivek Ramaswamy suspended his campaign and promptly endorsed Trump.
Earlier tonight, I called Donald Trump to tell him that I congratulated him on his victory, and now going forward, he will have my full endorsement for the presidency, and I think we're going to do the right thing for this country.
Turnout was lower than past GOP contests as Iowans braved frigid temperatures to cast their votes. Multiple media organizations called the night for Trump while voting was ongoing. Trump was lifted by white evangelicals, with one CNN entrance poll showing 53% of the voting bloc backing the former president. While Trump called on his opponents to drop out of the race, they're not resting. It's on to New Hampshire with that state's primary just a week away. Matt Gelka, CBN News.
Thanks, Matt. Well, Nathan Gonzalez, editor of Inside Elections and a Faith Nation contributor, joins us now. Nathan, a resounding win for the former president in Iowa last night. What do the Iowa caucuses forecast for the rest of this primary race?
Well, over the past 20-plus years, Iowa has not been a great predictor of the eventual Republican presidential nominee or the next president. But in this case, I think Iowa has backed the likely frontrunner for the nomination. Trump did what he needed to do. He won big. He also benefited from a muddled second, third-place finish between DeSantis and Haley that keeps DeSantis in the race. And Ramaswamy wasn't getting a high percentage of the vote, and that's why he dropped out. But I think that those voters are more likely to go to Trump, since really Ramaswamy was trying to use that Trump message, just a different vehicle for it.
Yeah, I saw that too. Well, the New Hampshire contest is next. DeSantis narrowly edged out Haley, as you mentioned, for second place in Iowa. But Haley has all the momentum heading into New Hampshire. Could the former South Carolina governor pull off an upset in the first in the nation primary?
I think it's still unlikely that she pulls off an upset, but let's say that she does. It's still going to be difficult for her to knock off Trump, because New Hampshire is a little bit different in that it's a more moderate electorate. Independents are allowed to participate in the Republican primary, and that's different than future states. South Carolina, even though that's Haley's home state, it's an electorate that I think is more favorable to Trump. And then we get into Super Tuesday on March 5th, where there'll be 16 states, I think, and more conservative electorates. And so even if Haley is able to pull off an upset, I think that this is Trump's nomination to lose.
All right. Well, in a post on X today, Nikki Haley is targeting former President Trump for skipping all 5 debates in the GOP presidential campaign, adding that her next debate will be either Donald Trump or Joe Biden, already leaving DeSantis out of the conversation. Of can she say that, Nathan, given last night's performance?
Yeah, it's a little bit, trying to get under the skin of DeSantis and try to elevate herself that she is already, that she's already up on the same stage as Trump. She has work to do. I think that the expectations were higher for DeSantis in Iowa. I mean, even DeSantis' own poll way back in late May, early June, only had him at 29% and down 10 to Trump, and DeSantis fell short of all of those things. But I think Haley is anxious to move on. But let's say DeSantis gets out, Wendy, some of his supporters are going to go to Trump. They're not all going to gravitate toward Haley. So this race is more complicated than just being a one-on-one battle between Trump and someone who's not Trump.
So we're not going to see a repeat of Iowa for Trump in New Hampshire, are we?
No, I would be shocked if it's the same margin, but I would be even more shocked if Haley pulls off the upset. But I expect it to be more narrow, but then it's going to get better for Trump as we get later in the calendar.
All right, Nathan Gonzalez, we always appreciate your insights. Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
You too. Well, the next major abortion battle is set to be over access to the abortion pill as the Supreme Court reviews a case involving access to mifepristone. The Biden administration is defending the FDA's 2021 move to make the pill available by mail. And as CBN's Brody Carter reports, pro-life supporters see this as an opportunity to rein in a runaway federal agency.
The Food and Drug Administration first approved mifepristone in 2000 with a number of conditions designed to prevent it from causing serious side effects.
The FDA also has this drug under a black box. That is their most serious safety regulation.
That's because it can cause excessive bleeding and even death. In 2016, the FDA amended its safety conditions, extending the drug's usage to terminate a pregnancy from 7 to 10 weeks. And in 2021, it announced doctors would no longer be required to prescribe or dispense the pill in person.
And a group of doctors have sued the FDA, claiming that the restrictions that were removed in the years 2016 and 2020 not only put the safety of women and girls at risk, but it also was another usurpation of executive power.
Now the Supreme Court will hear a case challenging the FDA's approval of the pill, which claims they broke its own rules and the law by eliminating safety regulations, follow-up appointments, and medical reporting, and by making the drug easily accessible by mail.
In fact, abortifacients carry a complication rate 50% higher than even surgical abortions, but it accounts for more than 50% of the abortions that take place in the country every year.
Attorney Sarah Perry with the Heritage Foundation argues the court will not only determine how accessible these pills remain, it will also set precedent for the extent of power exercised by the FDA as an executive agency.
And it's a huge part of this case because what's at issue is whether the FDA took those risks seriously enough when it allowed these pills to be sent through the mail, including to children, without their parents knowing.
A 2021 poll asked about trust issues when it comes to public health. Only 37% of Americans polled trust recommendations from the FDA. Meanwhile, the Biden administration is defending federal approval of the abortion pill, including its recent move to make it available by mail. Now, Danco Laboratories, the company that makes the pill, wants the Supreme Court to reverse the lower court's ruling.
It is the drug manufacturer who says we will lose money if safeguards are reimposed on these medications.
The Supreme Court will likely hear arguments in this case this spring, with a decision expected by June. That timing during an election year could further elevate the abortion debate. Brody Carter, CBN News.
Thanks, Brody. In Washington, D.C., the countdown is on. The National March for Life is 3 days away. This year's theme, With Every Woman, for Every Child. Friday's 51st annual March for Life is set to challenge abortion and champion the beauty of life from the moment of conception, highlighting pregnancy centers and maternity homes that support women and families in need during and after pregnancy. March for Life 2024 aims to make abortion, quote, unthinkable in American culture. And joining us now is March for Life President Jeanne Mancini, and she's the one who made that quote to make abortion unthinkable in America. Jeanne, this is the second March for Life since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. Is this still a celebratory moment for the pro-life movement, or is there more work to be done?
Well, I think both. It is a celebratory moment, but we're all keenly aware that there's work to be done. There's so much confusion in our culture over abortion, and that really the confusion is abortion good for women? And spoiler alert, it's not. Yeah. It's never good for women, and it's never good for the baby. And so we have our work cut out for us to change hearts and minds and to educate on this issue.
Jeanne, this year's theme is pro-life, with every woman for every child. What does that mean exactly?
So the heart of the pro-life movement is to help both mother and baby and father, families, to flourish, to fully humanly flourish. We're not just for the baby, but we're certainly not for the baby without the mother. We're for both. And so we are going to discuss that. The March for Life allows kind of a springboard to be able to talk about these deeper issues. And within that context, we want to really highlight the noble work of pregnancy care centers and maternity homes around the country. There are over 3,400 of those collective centers and homes in our country. And in the latest year that data is available, 2022, these places provided over $358 million in resources for women facing unexpected pregnancies and their families. These are things like housing, healthcare, diapers, formula, food, you name it. And so the heart of the pro-life movement is for both mom and baby, and we plan to showcase that.
That's awesome. Well, this march comes during an election year, of course. Do you see abortion being a major issue in this year's presidential election?
Yeah, so the March for Life doesn't endorse candidates ever, but absolutely, I see that this is on people's minds, that we're still in what I would describe as the cultural earthquake of the overturn of Roe, which again is such a victory, but also leads to a lot of confusion in people's minds and hearts that don't really know the truth about this issue. And so yes, I think this will be very front and center in the presidential debates and in the presidential election. And you can bet that we'll be doing our part to educate as much as possible.
Jeanne, talk to us about the abortion pill case. Is this the next major abortion battle for the pro-life movement?
Yes. So the abortion pill, chemical abortion, mifepristone and misoprostol, this is a two-step regimen, was originally approved in the year 2000, and that approval was rushed, flawed, and politicized. And it's that approval that was that there's a lawsuit against that politicized approval. But really what the Supreme Court is taking up now is the question of mail order chemical abortion. So what we see from pro-choice advocates often is greater access to abortion is often equated with women's health. But the reality is that they're lowering the bar on health regulatory standards here. So being pro-life is being pro-women, and it's very much being pro-women's health. And the reality is that chemical abortion is much harder on women. And obviously it takes the life of the child too, but it's 4 times harder on women than surgical abortion. And so the idea of having mail order chemical abortion is not in the best interest of women's health, and it's flat out dangerous. So that's what this Supreme Court case is being taken up is about. That's being taken up. They'll hear oral arguments in April, and we are certainly watching this closely and praying for the best outcome.
Wow, that's interesting. I did not know all that. Very interesting. Real quick, Jeanne, weather's never stopped this event, but snow is in the forecast for Friday. Is the weather going to affect turnout?
Probably not. I can remember the blizzard of 2016 where people got caught on the Pennsylvania Turnpike for like 24 hours, but that didn't dim the turnout of the March for Life. So, you know, we're like the mailman, rain, sleet, snow, or shine. We show up in March. There's no sacrifice too great to march for the single greatest human rights cause of our time, which is the unborn child and mother. And so I don't think so. I think we'll have a big crowd on Friday.
I think you will. I know you will. You guys are amazing. We look forward to covering it. Jeannie Mancini, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Wendy. You
Absolutely.
too.
Well, don't miss our live coverage of the 51st National Annual March for Life. You can watch it on the CBN News channel, CBN News app, or YouTube channel, beginning at noon on Friday, this Friday the 19th. Well, the dollar has long been the world's reserve currency. Coming up, the effort to dethrone the greenback and what that would mean for America and for you. Welcome back to Faith Nation. An international alliance of multiple countries has been pushing to dethrone the dollar, and now they've added more key members. Dale Hurd brings us this look at their mission to transform how the world does business.
These countries comprise almost half of the world's population, hold close to half the world's oil, and want to dethrone the dollar as the world's reserve currency. Known as BRICS, this collection of emerging economies whose name is an acronym for members Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, doubled in size on January 1st, adding Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. More than 30 other nations have expressed interest in joining this group that wants to ditch the dollar and establish a new global economic order. Currency expert James Rickards blames the U.S. government for creating this economic rival.
You could ask, well, why is this going on at all? And the answer is we've turned the dollar into a weapon, and if you're on the receiving end of that, Russia found out the hard way, but if you're China, Brazil, India, a lot of other countries, what you're asking yourself right now is, hey, what happens if the United States wakes up one day and decides they don't like what I'm doing? It doesn't have to be invading Ukraine. It could be any policy you think of. Are they going to do this to me, freeze my reserves, freeze my securities, kick me out of SWIFT, etc.?
Whether BRICS could actually create a currency to surpass the dollar is up for debate.
While the threat of a BRICS currency overtaking the dollar makes some nervous, many experts see too many obstacles in the way of that happening anytime soon.
About 60% of global reserves are in securities denominated in dollars. So the U.S. ends up being the dominant reserve currency. Now, that's not easy to unseat. Even if you don't like the dollar, you have to ask yourself, well, where is there a securities market big enough to absorb these savings? And there isn't one.
Financial analyst Peter Earle.
For a BRICS currency to really take off, they would have to come up with something better than the dollar, quite simply. But it's not simple to do. Of the many ideas that have been thrown around, only gold or maybe some sort of stable coin, which is a specialized inflation-resistant cryptocurrency, would have a chance.
This alliance also looks very unstable politically. BRICS can only make decisions unanimously, and yet two of its members, India and China, have fought one another on their border. New members Egypt and Ethiopia are fighting over water from the Nile River. And Saudi Arabia and Iran are arch-enemies in the Middle East. What BRICS could accomplish is to further weaken the dollar by no longer using it as a payment currency between member nations, which would make your dollars worth less.
It is important. It does reduce the role of the dollar. It could be inflationary in the U.S. If dollars are less in demand, they may be worth less.
But replacing the dollar as the world reserve currency is not likely anytime soon. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Thanks, Dale. Still missing. 2 U.S. Navy SEALs lost in the Arabian Sea. When we come back, the latest on the search effort off the coast of Somalia. Today, the U.S. carried out new strikes against Houthi targets in Yemen after the Iran-backed rebels continued attacks on global shipping lanes. The latest escalation comes as U.S. Navy ships and aircraft continue to search areas of the Gulf of Aden looking for 2 missing Navy SEALs. The Gulf is located between Yemen and Somalia. U.S. officials say the SEALs took over a vessel last week headed for Yemen's Houthi rebels. The boat carried Iranian-made missile parts and other weapons. An official says the Navy boarded the vessel in rough seas and high waves, knocked one SEAL off the boat. A teammate tried to rescue him and both went missing. The Navy arrested the crew members and confiscated the weapons of the Houthis. As U.S. ally Israel keeps up its fight against Hamas in the Gaza Strip and Hezbollah in the north, the country's defense minister says Israel's future depends on the outcome of this war. The Israeli military says the war will stretch on throughout 2024. Israeli Defense Minister Gallant says the intensive fighting in the northern Gaza Strip has ended and will also be over soon in the city of Khan Yunis in southern Gaza. But the Israeli military will keep attacking to eliminate Hamas terrorist capabilities and return the hostages home.
The cruel enemy before us understands only force. If the fire stops, the fate of the abductees will be sealed for many years in the captivity of Hamas. Without military pressure, no one will talk to us. Without military pressure, we will not be able to reach any agreements. Only from a position of strength can the abductees be freed.
In a grim tribute, Hamas marked 100 days of war by releasing a series of videos about 3 hostages, one whose mother has brain cancer and recently appealed for the release of her daughter so she can see her before she dies. Meanwhile, Gaza's humanitarian crisis is worsening, with 85% of the territory's 2.3 million Palestinians having fled their homes and UN agencies warning of mass starvation and disease. Coming up, the perfect storm for a Washington, D.C. tradition. That's next on Faith Nation. Finally tonight, the Washington, D.C. area saw its first significant snowfall in 2 years this week, creating the perfect storm for a snowball fight, of course. One group is making the best of it in a local tradition. Take a look. It's being called the Battle of Stopenheimer. After last summer's blockbuster nuclear bomb movie Oppenheimer, dozens gathered early this morning on the National Mall for a huge snowball fight. The Washington, D.C. Snowball Fight Association posted on X about the last-minute battle taking place between the National Art Gallery and the Air and Space Museum. I'm jealous. Good for them. We're not getting any snow here in Virginia Beach. Well, thanks so much for watching. See you tomorrow.